Hey, it's Tara and it's time for Sunday Reads. So, last week I recorded a nice long 10-minute video with all of my thoughts on the books and stuff that I had read, and there was no sound, and every subsequent effort also produced no sound. So after much praying to the technological gods, my iPhone has started putting sound with video again. So here I am, and I will try to catch up on last week as well as this week. And it's kind of dark in here. Why? Maybe that's a little bit better. I don't know. Yes, it's a beautiful sunny day, and it's actually quite warm out. It's 25 degrees, which Celsius. I don't remember what that is in Fahrenheit, like 80 something. Anyways, you think I would be used to it because, you know, Florida, and Tokyo, but no. Anyways, moving on. So it's been, you know, a week, maybe 2 weeks since I finished some of these books, so I will probably be giving really short reviews. Comments. Let's go with comments. Let's start with Endymion. I read this with Rachel at Nnedi. It's the third book in the Hyperion Cantos by Simmons, and as you've probably heard all over the place, it's not as strong as the first two books. It's set about a few hundred years after the first two books, and the whole tone of the story shifts, and it's basically the falling of the world as they knew it, and how the world has fared in those 300 years and what has happened. And basically what's happened is that the church has become like all powerful because they have discovered the secret to resurrection, basically resurrection. And you know how it goes with entrenched views, and you know, several centuries of the same people being in power leads to, what's that word when nothing changes? I don't know. Hopefully you know what I mean. I will probably think of it much later. But anyways, it's not as strong as the first book, and it's a slow start. I didn't really like the characters very much when I started. They seemed kind of 2D, but as the story progressed, I got closer and closer to them, and now I really enjoy them, except Anya, who is the unfortunately main character who it's hard to feel close to. But then again, she is the chosen one, so you know, maybe we're not meant to be close to her. I don't know. Anyways, we'll be reading the last in the Hyperion Cantos in December, and I'm really excited. Next, I finished The City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennet, and I've heard a lot about this around the booktube, and I kept putting it off, and then my grandma got it for me for my birthday, so I figured that maybe I should probably read it. So I did. So basically, in this world, gods are real, and their reality is truth. That sounds really weird, and it's a little difficult to understand. I know that. But what happened was that the Continentals, who had these gods, ended up subjugating the people of Cypur, who, you know, didn't have their own gods for reasons unknown to anyone. So they were enslaved, basically, by the Continentals, until one day one of the Cypurians rises up and kills the gods. And at that point, the Cypurians, they don't enslave the Continentals so much as just repress them hardcore. They're not allowed to talk about their old gods or their history. They're not allowed to know their history. But of course, Cypurians can research all that stuff. So this foments a lot of discord, obviously, between the peoples. And it's about what happens after that. Anyways, it was a really good story. I liked the world building and the mythology. Sometimes it was a little too pat. But overall, I enjoyed it, and I will be moving on to the second book, which comes out, I think, in November. I read my Japanese literature for the month, which was The Master of Go by Yasunari Kawabata. It is about the final chess match of the Master of Go between one of his disciples. And the Master of Go is an elderly man, and it's set in 1938 to 1942 about. I forget the exact timeline, but it is during the Second World War, and it's basically it's just the story of the chess match. There's no real plot. It's just the beginning of the chess match to the end of the chess match, and it goes over, I think, like a 6-month period, and they're just traveling along and playing, and there's a lot of like sitting for a couple hours. It's mostly focusing on the people and their actions and reactions and attitudes and things like that. And it has been said to be like allegory, is that the right word, for old Japan versus new Japan, and the changes that come with new ideas and new cultures being introduced and things like that. So I thought that it should be boring. Like, while I was reading it, nothing was really happening, but actually I wasn't at all bored, and I read through it really quickly. It's pretty short, around 200 pages, and yeah, it was good. It's actually like a fictionalized biographical thing, because it was Kawabata actually was the journalist reporting on this chess match, and he sort of fictionalized events, but mostly stuck to it according to the translator, who was really good. Edward G. Seidensticker. He had a lot of really intelligent commentary in the footnotes, and I really enjoyed his translation. Then, instead of moving on to my SF classic for the month, I read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and I loved it. It's the story that was actually being told in Fangirl, one of her earlier books. So it's a fan fiction made into a book, and I just thought that was a really interesting Inception-like thing. So yeah, beyond that, the story was really interesting. I had a hard time at first because it's basically like Harry Potter, only more supernatural, if that makes any sense. But yeah, anyways, I had a hard time because I kept drawing a lot of parallels between the Harry Potter series and what was happening in, Simon Snow. But so it kept me really unsettled, but I really enjoyed the characters. It was kind of like a darker, meatier, that sounds weird, Harry Potter. Like, I know that Harry Potter was not a shallow series. I love it, but maybe this one feels like it's more for adults, is basically what I'm trying to say. Anyways, it has a homosexual relationship, and really a fairly diverse cast, and platonic relationships and non-platonic, obviously romantic, that's the word I'm looking for. And it's very varied, and I loved the relationships in the story. And so far I haven't yet to meet a Rainbow Rowell novel in which I don't love the relationships, so keep on keeping on, lady. So that's all that I have read. No, that's not true. I also read Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I read that during the 24-hour readathon with Rachel from Nnedi. She was reading it, and I had it because Sabrina at Stacotino was basically like, I read this, it's amazing, you need to read it. And I was like, I don't know. And so she bought it for me, and so of course I had to read it. And I am so glad that I did. It was a really, really nice little novella. A lot of hard questions about family and values and what's important to you, and lack of communication, and what happens when two peoples can't understand each other. And I thought it was really fantastic. Okay, so that's all I read. I'm currently reading The Disappearance by Philip Wylie, which is my SF classic for the month. It was published in 1951 originally, and it's set in, I think, like the 1960s or somewhere around there. And the basic premise is that one day all the women on the earth vanish in a blink, in less than a blink. And it follows the main character and his wife, Paula, and I forget the name, Bill Gaunt. And he is a philosopher and professor, and really, he worked with the with the Manhattan Project, and he married this, fiery redhead who was, I think, like 19 or 20 when they married, and he allowed her to continue through college, and she majored in languages, and so she was a really educated woman, but she still played the role of housewife and didn't, basically gave up her career desires to be a mother. And so anyways, one day all of the women disappear, and it actually tells the story of, from Bill's point of view, where all of the women disappear and what happens, and it tells the story from Paula's point of view, because actually it's sort of like a split timeline. In Paula's timeline, all of the men disappeared, and it talks a lot about, or I guess it imagines what would happen in these cases. The men's world is a lot more violent and sexualized, and while they are able to keep the peace, it's really tenuous, and basically life doesn't change as much as they know it because they're trained and things like that. But on the women's side, it sort of takes a step back because they don't have the training. They have the capacity, but they never learned, and there are only, you know, a handful of people who are trained in each you know, industrial field, and it's just not enough, and they can't train other women fast enough to keep the world running, basically. So they're sort of taken back a few steps, and it's all about the mental breakdown and things like that. And there's a lot of commentary on equality and women's rights and how men have been oppressing women. And normally when I read this in a 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s novel, SF novel especially, it's sort of like, yes, women should be equal, but it usually takes a really snooty sort of tone, like, yes, women should be equal, they're good children. But there's, so far I haven't really had much feeling of that from this. There's a little bit, but for the most part it seems like what he's saying makes sense, and some of the thought processes he has are arguments that I've heard today, and so it's been a really good experience so far. However, the main character is a philosopher, so there are sections where you'll be reading 15 minutes of like a philosophy paper he wrote, or, you know, talking to, you know, a meeting between men talking about God and you know, humanity and women and things like that. But anyways, I'm only like 70% through, so I'm really looking forward to the end. It's a little bit slow going, but I'm enjoying the speculation, so there's that. I have zero ideas what I'm going to read after that. I'll figure it out. For now, I have beef stew cooking and sweet chili chicken thighs, and my apartment smells awesome, and I'm gonna go clean a lot. And yes, next weekend I have a concert next Sunday night, and I'm very excited about it. Other than that, nothing. Yes. So, how have you been? It's been a couple weeks, but I am catching up on your videos now, and, you know, how have you been? What have you been up to? Do you have anything exciting coming up? And what are you reading? Anything that I should be interested in? Because I don't know what I'm reading next. Yeah, I guess that's it. So, until next time.